The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's Newforma ConstructX webinar. My name is Allison Whitney, and we're going to be talking about some ways that we can use the technology we have available in ConstructX to really reduce processing times for RFIs, submittals, and some of the other construction administration tasks we deal with every day. So we'll get right into it. Just to give you a little bit of background here. My name, as I said, is Allison Whitney, and I am the ConstructX product manager here at Newforma. So I've been working with that for several years, and I wear a couple other hats as well, but primarily for today, I am the ConstructX product manager. So just to give you a quick agenda and some quick housekeeping items. So one of the things we want to talk about today, just briefly, is some of the technology challenges we face and some of the reasons that we have a lot of overhead and administrative overhead with processing those RFIs and submittals. A lot of times the management of that, the administration of that, can take up a lot of time in our day, and we want to look at ways that we can reduce that. And then again, looking into that a little bit deeper with how we can streamline those processes and take advantage of some of the technologies we have inside ConstructX to make that process less of a burden so that we can get back to doing the actual work rather than having to keep up with spreadsheets and all of that kind of stuff. So we'll be integrating demonstrations throughout the presentation here to show you where we are in ConstructX, kind of how we use the tools we have available to really streamline and optimize those processes. As we're going along, if you have questions, please feel free to post those in the questions or chat window on inside GoToWebinar here, and then we'll hold those till the end, and we'll look at those at the end and go through those as we have time. And then finally, when we wrap up here today, we hope you'd like to continue the conversation with us about ConstructX and how we can use it to help you with your projects. And I'll provide you with some contact information and ways you can help work through that, continue that conversation with us after today. But all right, so to start off, I just want to get kind of a quick feel from you guys. We're going to do a quick poll here about what are some of your biggest technology challenges. So if you want to just take a moment and select the answers there, we'll give that just a minute, and then we'll talk about it on the other side of that. So, we find, as I said, we find a lot of people struggle with technology challenges just day to day because it's not your job. Your job is to get the work done on site. That's really, we're trying to get projects done on budget, on time, and a lot of these administrative things can get in the way, and technology issues can get in the way of that. So just while you guys are wrapping up there, let's take a quick look at the poll results here. So it looks like we've got a pretty good spread here. So connecting project team members, maintaining audit trails, sharing files with project team members, administrative tasks, working productively in the field. So it looks like we've got pretty even spread over all of those, which is not unexpected. We're not usually limited to one challenge. A lot of times it's a combination of those things, right? Having the tools available to work through that. So I want to go ahead and close that up. And just as a brief note here, we're going to move forward through this, and there we go. And what I want to look at next, sorry about that, do that, there we go, okay. So we were curious about this as well here at Newforma, and so we recently, just to kind of confirm what we're seeing in the poll results here, we recently put out a State of Technologies and AEC Firms executive report, and it was a survey of over 800 AEC professionals in the US, kind of looking at what are some of our technology challenges in the industry as a whole. And you can see a lot of the same things that we just saw with our group here. There's a pretty even spread across a number of these different areas that really challenge us from a technology standpoint and prevent us from getting to the task at hand. So what we really want to talk about today is how we can use ConstructX to meet a lot of those challenges. And so again, just to reiterate here, how much time and money are we spending specifically on submittals and RFIs? We know there are other things we do in the project management process, but that's a lot of it, right? So if we're looking at something like hundreds of RFIs and submittals in any given project, and we're spending in this case, 8 hours of review time on those things. Any little glitch or any additional overhead is really just eating into the time we have to actually work on getting the job at hand done. So we want to just look at ways that we can use the technology we do have available to improve those challenges and get over some of those hurdles and make this a much more streamlined and efficient process. So that being said, what we're going to focus on today with ConstructX and with this webinar is really looking at some of these things we can do with our construction administration, so RFIs and submittals, but also some of those other pieces of information and communication that we go through with our teams, how we can use the software to really improve that so it becomes a benefit and an asset and rather than a challenge. So just as a quick overview, this is kind of be the framework for our webinar today. So first one is we want to establish a collaborative environment, right? We want to have, for connecting with project team members, having a single place where everybody can connect easily with each other and communicate is critical to getting information out there at the same time for the team. The second one, we're going to talk a little bit, and this is really specifically around the RFIs and submittals, is standardizing and automating those workflows. How can we take some of that manual headache and overhead out of the process and make that a more streamlined way to work? Along with that, automating some of those administration and audit trails. Again, I think we spend a lot of time trying to keep up on just keeping track of things. So how can we use the technology at hand to make that, to have the technology to do the work for us? And then talking a little bit more about deploying that technology in the field, again, to try and streamline processes, reduce double work and overhead, and get things moving as quickly as possible to who they need to get to. And then a little bit about just product training and support, how we can move through and really help get our teams optimized so they're ready to hit the ground running with a new project. So to address the first point there, establishing a collaborative environment. So as we know, a lot of times when we're getting onto a project, each project group in the project team, so on the overall project, the contractors, architects, engineers, and owners very likely have their own siloed systems, right? So we've got all of the information the contractors uploading, downloading to their system, the architect, and so on. And that can require a lot of then additional communication outside of those systems, so everyone is trying to stay on the same page. So what we do with ConstructX instead is that everybody has, it provides a single source of truth, a single location which everyone on the team, no matter what discipline they're in, can access it, they can share, and they can keep track of the information on the project. And the benefit of this really is that everyone is seeing this at the same time, has access to the same information. So you don't have to worry about someone not reading an email and being behind on what's going on the project, for example. And just to really kind of reiterate that, so with ConstructX, what we're doing is we have all the project data stored. It's a web browser, it's a cloud-based repository. So all the information for the project is stored centrally. It's easy for people to get to with simply a web client. There's no install required, no server headaches, that kind of stuff. It's really something, as long as you have a browser and an internet connection, you can access the project information. It, again, gives everyone that one view into the source of truth, the real project data at that moment in time, and everybody has that same capability. So certainly we look at things, the obvious, right? Submittals and RFIs, those kinds of pieces that are a critical part of our construction administration. We do also make it possible to store other pieces of information that are critical to your project, right? Like making sure you know what the latest sheet is for any given drawing, those sorts of things. What the latest version is, excuse me. Certainly along the lines of communication, we have the ability to store things like meeting minutes. So if you have OAC meetings, kickoff meetings, and you want that information to be available to everyone for reference, that can be available there. And then also a piece, we'll talk a little bit about field management. So, as you're moving toward the end of a project, for example, you need to do punch lists, that kind of things. We have a number of tools that let you work with that as well. Point being is everything comes into this central repository that everyone can get to and see in real time. So next then, of course, we're looking at how do we automate and standardize workflows, and specifically, what are some of the headaches we see and administrative overhead we get with RFIs and submittals, because that's a big piece here. So, without a central way to work, we've got the subcontractor, and he's going to put together his submittal or RFI with the attachments. He's going to email that to the GC, and then the contractor is going to have to go through, probably update a log somewhere in Excel in a spreadsheet saying they got the submittal or RFI and update the status, and then go through, update the cover sheet with those stamps, any information that needs to go through from that standpoint, and then manually download from the email, do any markups, put all that stuff back into an email and send it to the architect, right? So I'm already exhausted. There are a lot of manual steps there. And then at the same time, then that process just simply gets repeated by the architect when he or she is ready to then send that off to reviewers and consultants, engineers, and then they all do the same thing. And then that whole process reverses itself back through the architect to the GC to the sub. So there's lots of manual steps, lots of uploading and downloading, lots of chances for error, and lots of chances for something to get missed, right? Because this is all happening in multiple pieces and multiple parts as we go through. So with ConstructX, what we're able to do is really automate, streamline, and standardize those workflow steps. So again, everything's coming into a single system, and we have the workflow eliminating those steps with automation. For example, if you're entering information manually into a cover sheet or a transmittal, we can set the system up so that it will automatically update that information, review statuses, and so on as it's going through the process. We also have some built-in markup tools so that instead of having to do upload, download, everyone can work on the same document with the same tools at the same time. Again, streamlining that, reducing the chances for error and hiccups in the process. And in addition, obviously we recognize that it's very important. People are very dependent on getting email notifications when they need to do something. So one of the things we have built into the process here is that every step there's an email notification sent to those folks who are involved in the workflow. So they get a notification that it's time for them to do some work. So, subcontractor now can come in, upload their information for the submittal or RFI into ConstructX, and as soon as they pick the GC, they send it off to them. The GC gets an email notification. They can either jump in from that email notification directly and work on the item, or they can come in, and I'll show you in ConstructX, come into some logs and some other ways to get to that. But then that process keeps going. So same thing, they can add what they need to that item before they send it for review. And then the design team has access to those same markup tools, making comments, can work through this whole flow here, and then it comes back through, gets returned, and closed out. So all of those steps have email notification, have history of the item, so everyone can have visibility into where is it in the process, where is it in the review, is it done yet, is it on time, is it late, all those things that we rely on to make sure we're moving information through in a timely manner, we've automated and built into this workflow. So really the goal is to reduce the amount of that administrative busy work and overhead you have to deal with to get these things through. So, excuse me. So all of that being said, I want to go ahead and hop into ConstructX here, and we'll take a look at a couple things really related to those first 2 points we just discussed. So I'm going to jump into ConstructX, and you'll see here, this is the main landing page in ConstructX. So a couple things to note here. One, ConstructX is a single sign-on product. So if you're working on multiple projects within ConstructX, you just log in once, and you're going to come to this screen, and any bar that looks like this is another project. So just to show you, I'll kind of scroll down. This is one of my demo users, so he's on a lot of projects, but you can see the other projects here. And really all you need to do to make sure a project is active is just click on that bar. It'll be in the darker text there, and you'll know that's the active project you're going to be working with. We saw that when we were talking about establishing that collaborative environment. We saw briefly all the different modules that we have in ConstructX, and those are represented across the top in these menus here. So that's one way you can jump into where you need to work. You could certainly come in and pick submittals, RFIs, whatever else it is you need to do. And then on the main screen here, what you're seeing is what we call our dashboard. So per user, you can actually customize the items you're seeing here. And really, this is a representation of different logs we have, different views into the data. that some are standard and some you can create on your own. So for me, I am currently logged in as a subcontractor because I need to come in and see what submittals I need to put in here. So something else to be aware of with ConstructX is what you see on screen and the activities you're able to do in that workflow are very dependent on the role you're assigned in the software. So as an example, I'm in here as a subcontractor, which means I'm going to be able to create draft submittals and RFIs and send those to my GC, but I'm not going to be able to obviously send those directly to the design team or the architect or those reviewers there. It's going to have to go through the GC in that workflow. So by the same token, members of the design team can't see draft submittals or RFIs. They have to wait for those to be submitted for review. So there's a lot of pieces of the workflow that are really managed based on those permissions. So one of the things I want to talk about quickly here with the idea of establishing the collaborative environment. Of course, I can see all of this information about, in this case, submittals here. I want to jump very quickly into something we call the sheet index. As I mentioned off the top, there are other things we can control and manage within ConstructX beyond the RFIs and submittals that are also critical to that team communication and making sure everyone's on the same page. So in this case, what I've got is someone on the team has uploaded the sheets for the project. So whether that are, these might be CD sets, these might come from change orders, from RFIs, whatever the case might be, but we've got a set of the full-size sheets here. Let's say, for example, I want to look at a sheet and I want to make sure I've got the most current version before I go out to the site and that I'm looking at the right information. So I can just go ahead and click right into a sheet here. And what this is going to show me is just some basic information about that sheet. Here's the current file. So I know that this is the most recent up-to-date version of this particular sheet. I could just click it to view it or download it and be on my way. I also get some additional information here about where this current version is coming from. So in this case, I can see that this particular version is because of an addendum. And if I want to even take a step further and see, well, what were previous versions of this like? Where did they come from? I can view the history, and it'll show me the history of that particular sheet and where its versions have come from. So if I needed to, I could jump back in time and see, what was the original, CD sort of line in the sand there, and I can move forward from there. And then if I'm back at the sheet index here, just one other thing to mention quickly. So again, you're giving everybody insight into the current sheet. Anyone on the team can come in and do what I just did. They know they've got the current sheet. It was a couple clicks there. If I do want to grab a set, like I need to download some of these so I can print them or take them with me somewhere, I do have the option to download a current set. It's going to grab all the sheets as I see here on screen and give me the option to download those as PDFs and zip them up into a zip file. So just wanted to mention that as one of the many ways that we really let you manage your project data and give everyone real-time visibility into what's going on in the project. Let's jump back now. We're going to talk a little bit more now about the automating and standardizing your workflows. So really, as we're working around submittals and RFIs, how do we manage that process more efficiently with ConstructX? So as I mentioned, all the logs here and the things you see on the dashboard, users can pick and choose what they see there. By default, different users are going to see certain things. So as an example here, we've got my expected submittals. So one of the options you have with a project setup, and that we very often recommend you do this, is you can upload a submittal register from the administrative side. So that can include all your spec sections, the submittals you're expecting for the project. And as part of that, you can assign the subcontractor you expect to, or who is responsible for submitting that submittal. So that's what we're looking at here. In this case, for my project, someone has uploaded the register, included those responsible subcontractors as part of that. So when I come in as a subcontractor, I can take a look here and I can see if I have any, what are my submittals that I'm expected to put into the system, and have I done that yet? And I can take a look at the status over here. So right now I can see I've got a couple that are to be submitted. So I haven't submitted these yet. They're on my plate. They're on my to-do list of things I need to do. So I'm going to go ahead in. There are a number of different ways I could start a submittal. This is one of them. So if I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, geez, okay, I need to create this masonry, mortaring, grouting samples. So I'm going to just click this right here. This is going to take me into that register item for that spec section. And it's going to tell me exactly what I need to do. As I come down to the bottom of the page here, I'm going to see that here's, for example, this particular type. So this samples submittal for this spec section is open, and I need to add that submittal. If there's one that's been added already, I'll see the number for that. But I know this one's open, it's on my plate, I need to go ahead and add that submittal. So I can click in and add that. And so far, I haven't had to enter any information, right? I've just done a couple of clicks, and now I'm at the point where I'm adding that submittal. It's already selected the spec section for me. I've got the number there. It's already entered the title for me based on the register. I could modify this if I need to. The type is already selected for me. And then I can come down here, and all I need to do is I need to go ahead and browse, just find the appropriate file there. So I'm going to hop in there, and let's see. I'm just going to grab something here. Let's go with that. That'll work for now. So I'm going to upload whatever file it is if I need to. I don't have to upload an attachment if I don't want to, or if it's not required. But if I do want to upload that, I've got that uploaded, ready to go. And then all I need to do as a subcontractor now, I come down here, I click the name of the contractor I need to send it to, and I send it off to the contractor. And as quickly as that, as easily as that, that submittal draft is now in the court, that ball, if you will, is in the court of my contractor. So we've gone through that first step of the process. The sub was able to, send that, create that submittal and send it over quickly with really just a couple clicks. I didn't actually have to type anything in there. So it's made that part of the process that much faster. Now to show you the next step, I'm going to just jump over as into a different browser. I'm now in the same project, but now I'm in as a contractor. So I am the contractor that my sub just sent this to. So again, I can get into this a number of different ways. I have some different logs up here on my screen. This time I'm going to go ahead into construction administration and just go to submittals this way. So I'm going to hop in here, and what I can see is right up at the top here, there is that draft that my sub just sent over. So if I need to work with it, I'm just going to click into it. I can see, yep, masonry, mortaring, grouting samples. I can see all that information. Here's the attachment. And at this point, I can go ahead and edit. And this gives me the option to, fix any mistakes if I need to, add any additional information. I have the ability to go ahead and add markups at this point if I need to before I send it for the design review. I could upload additional files if I need to. Any of those things that need to happen here, I can go ahead and make those changes. And then as soon as I'm ready, I can put in any additional sort of heads up comments for the design team if I need to. And as soon as I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and pick the architect I need to send it to, that design team member, and I'm going to send it, and it's going to be off into the review process. So just as simply as that, I didn't have to download anything. I didn't have to upload anything. I could also have gotten here by clicking the link from the email notification I got that a draft was sent for me to review. It really just depends on how you want to get in here. But it took me not a lot of time, not a lot of overhead. The workflow really pushes things along through the process for me. So, excuse me. So that's really kind of, some of the pieces of the mechanics of creating those submittals. And RFIs are a very similar process that really helps streamline that, really help reduce errors. If your sub is coming in and all that information is already there for them, they don't have to worry about typing. You don't have to worry about someone mistyping a spec section, for example, anything like that, and having to correct it later. It just goes through the system. So with that being said, I want to hop back over here to the workflows, to my PowerPoint for a second. And I've got another quick poll for you guys, another quick question for you guys. So again, sort of speaking to the third point, when you're looking at administering this, how are you currently tracking submittals and RFIs? Because again, I think this is one of those places where it can be a black hole of lost time sometimes, trying to maintain things like spreadsheets and keep that up to date. So I know that can be not the most fun part of the process. So we want to, again, try and make that as easy as possible and also make people self-sufficient in grabbing the information they need. All righty. So if we look at our poll here, it looks like, yep, we've got a lot of folks that are on the Excel spreadsheet plan there, as well as some got an automated system and then some other processes as well. So again, I think that really speaks to what we see as, you know, some of the things that become those time sucks, and really just how can we work with that and improve that process with a product that gives us some automation in a central repository. So again, so this is now we're looking at reducing that paperwork and administrative task overhead time, right? So if you're trying to manage these in a spreadsheet, you're always, I'm guessing you're having to do a lot of back and forth, spending a lot of time making updates to those spreadsheets, and then having to distribute that information, whether that's via email, whether that's having to print that out and take it to a meeting, printing other things just because that's how we can share that information, emailing it around, those sorts of things. And then to speak a little further in the process, from a filing standpoint, just keeping everything in place, but also what happens when we get to the end of a project. We've got a lot of administrative overhead there as well, because we want to make sure we've captured and filed all of the results of those, those closed submittals and RFIs and all of those other pieces of information that go back and forth during the life of a project. So what I want to do is I'm going to jump back into ConstructX here. I'm going to talk a little bit more through how, again, we can manage some of this information and really make it more accessible and more real-time, up-to-date, while reducing that overhead for everybody, making this a more efficient process. So I'm back in submittals here, and I'm still in as that contractor. However, everybody has visibility into the logs that we're going to talk about. So if you look at the right side of my screen here, you'll see this gray bar, and this is in RFIs, submittals, design bid docs, construction docs. All those sorts of things have a similar setup here. And what we're looking at is the system has a number of different standard logs that let you have real-time visibility into what's going on in your project, the status. So a lot of these, so you'll see I have things like draft, open, returned, closed. A lot of these, the standard ones are based on where the submittal or RFI is in that workflow. So if it's open, I know that it's with the design team during the review process and going through that workflow. If it's returned, I know I've gotten it back as the contractor, but I need to take an extra step to close it out to my subs. So that's where a lot of these come from. And depending on the role you have in the project, you'll see slightly different versions here. So as the contractor, I'm going to see my drafts as well as all drafts. Subs will see something slightly different. Design team will see something slightly different, but we can all have visibility into these. Excuse me. One that I like to look at here is this overdue plus next 7 days. So actually, let me take a look at this one first. It's all plus expected. So from a contractor side, I'm looking at what submittals are out there, what's in the process, what are we still expecting to have submitted that aren't out there yet. And this all plus expected log gives me exactly that information. So for all of the submittals and expected submittals we have in the system, what's their status, what's going on. So I can see, for example, these first 3 here, they're all to be submitted. We don't have any of these yet. There are no submittals against these spec sections of this type yet. Some of these other ones I can see, have already been returned, are pending, are in a draft state, or closed. So really, anywhere in the process, this is giving me visibility into my entire set of submittals and expected submittals. I can click into any of these, and depending on where it is in the process in that workflow, I have different things I can do. So for example, as we saw when we created it as a sub, I can see that this one hasn't been submitted yet. I could click into that register section and start creating that submittal. The status icons or state icons on the left here also give me some quick indicators as to where things are. For example, the dash means it's a draft. This icon with the sort of 3 dots means it's in that review process, the architect has forwarded it to their own reviewers, their consultants and engineers, and they're waiting for those responses. And this one is one that's been totally closed out back to the subs. So this really gives me some good visibility into what's going on with the submittals in my system. And I can slice and dice this data different ways depending on what else I have here. Another one that gives me a slightly different view into this, but some really valuable information, overdue plus next 7 days. So let's say these are ones that we know are working through the system, they're in that review process likely, and we kind of want to know where they are in that process. So what this particular log looks at is, all right, anything that's due in the next 7 days, you're going to get the number of days it is until it's due, plus anything that's overdue. And you can see that overdue appears in red, and this is true throughout all of our submittal and RFI logs. It'll appear in red, so it's another visual indicator that it's something to draw your attention that something needs to happen. What's also pretty cool here is that you'll see in this pending review by column, I can see who's on the hook, whose ball is the court in here for doing those reviews, for completing that information. So for me as a contractor, I can at least kind of see where it is in the process. You know, if I'm the architect, I'm waiting for, or someone else on the team, the design team who's waiting for that information, I can get quick visibility without having to click into the individual submittal of who's on the hook for getting the job done. So I can always, you know, go and make sure that information gets shared. Now, let's say, you know, like I said, we have a good number of standard logs here, but let's say you're looking for something more specific and we don't actually have it as a standard log. We do give you the option and the ability to create a custom log. And creating a custom log is something, again, that anyone on the project can do. If you're an administrator, you have the option to share that log to the entire project team. But if you're an individual, you can just create it for yourself. So really, it's all about what's going to help you see the information here you need the fastest. So for example, as an example of a custom log, I created one here that's my cast in place concrete submittals. So I created this particular log to just show me items, submittals that are in there for this particular spec section. And that's what it's showing me. So really, I can slice and dice this data based on, you know, who's submitting it, what state it's in, dates of submittal, due dates, all that sort of stuff. I can set up some some custom logs, excuse me, to really pinpoint what I want to see as a user. I want to hop back to my overdue plus next 7 days because there is another option for any of our logs. Let's say, again, I've got this in a log view and there's some other information I'd like to see in sort of this view, and maybe speaking a little bit more to what we might have in an Excel spreadsheet, right? I mean, this is some great information, but there's probably additional information I want to see. We do also give you this option called View Full Log. And what this lets you do is it'll pull up those same log results, so what we were just looking at on the screen, but it gives you the flexibility to pull in a number of different data fields that we're not seeing on the main screen here. So again, you can see this in a table in kind of a spreadsheet format without having to dig into each one individually. And the beauty of this is that I'm doing this, I'm not having to maintain this manually, right? I'm not having to go back and update a spreadsheet and bring it back and update and bring it back. I can click that button, I can look right here, and I can see as of this moment, you know, what's the status? Where are these in the review process? I do also have the option, if there's fields, additional fields that I want to see that I don't see here, I can actually add those to the to this form as well and bring that data in. And then I do have the option to export this data to Excel or something else. So if I do still want to pull it out, maybe I need to incorporate it into another report. Maybe I want to be able to do some additional calculations, manipulations, those sorts of things. There are certainly reasons that you would want to export it and have that available. We give you a way to do that. But now you're not having to manually maintain that spreadsheet over and over. You can just come in when you need it, pull this information, and share it however you need to. So that is really how we try and help you with, you know, some of that overhead maintenance on just keeping track of this stuff, the day-to-day administration of that, trying to keep track of all of those pieces of information and keep it up to date. This way you can come and just pull that from the system, and the workflow is helping keep this up to date. So it's there. It's not that burden on you anymore to have to manage that. it's really available here for you and for anyone else who wants to view that information who's part of the project. And then, as I mentioned, at the end of the project, of course, one of the other big administrative tasks and pieces of overhead is gathering all of the data from the project and getting that into some sort of final format where you can store that on your server, have that for archival and legal purposes. You want to have that project information bundled up for you. So what we do with ConstructX is at the end of a project, when it's ready, when it's done, everything's ready to go, and you're ready to close it out, we have the concept of an electronic archive. So essentially, whoever purchased the software is going to contact us and say, hey, we're ready to archive. Can you generate the archive for us? And then our support team will work through that. There are a couple additional steps in there, but essentially our support team will take that request, they'll close out the project and create an electronic archive and send the team a link to that archive that they can then download and store that data wherever they want to in their system. So just to give you a quick idea of what that looks like, this is what an archive looks like when it comes out. Of course, you can put your own picture in here. This is just our example, but if you have a picture of the completed project, something like that you want to include, that's part of the process. But really what I get here is the front end of this is a browser interface, but you don't have to be on the internet. It can just be anywhere. You just use the browser to access the information. But as you can see here, I've got all my modules. So for example, if I wanted to go back and look at a submittal for this particular project, I get the list, I can click into it, I can see all of that information, including the attachments, including the history of it, when it was submitted, when it was returned, who else worked on it, what was the review history, any references, and so on. So all of that project information is wrapped up for me, and it's downloadable in that archive that I can then, like I said, I can store that wherever I need to in my company, on my, my corporate servers, however you would normally maintain that backup, that project data. Once a project's complete, this is available for you. So you don't have to go through downloading one at a time or downloading everything off the system. We do that for you as the archive. So those are really some of the things we do to try and reduce that administrative ugliness for you and make life a little easier on that front, reducing that paperwork. So the next thing I want to mention here is we're talking about, deploying technology in the field. Obviously, we realize the way our world works now, everybody wants things right away, right? And also being able to work mobily is very important. So one of the options we do have available with ConstructX is there are several Newforma mobile apps that work in conjunction with ConstructX to help you manage some of those quality control items that you get, especially for the end of a project. And one in particular I'm just mentioning here, you can see a screenshot of it on the right-hand side here, is our Capture app. So the Capture app, what it lets you do is, as you're out in the field, let's say you see this damaged drywall and you need to get that fixed and create a punch list item for it. So you can snap a picture on site, and the Capture app is going to let you create that punch list item, and you associate it with the correct project. You can assign it to whoever you need to, enter the subject and description for it, and then you can also, if you have your spatial index uploaded, you can link it to a space, indicate the location, set a due date, and so on. Within the Capture app itself, there's also some simple markup tools, so you can actually use those on the image if you want to. As you can see here, I've done the cloud around that to highlight it. And then what you do is you can upload that, and you can upload that back to ConstructX into our quality control module so that it's there and available to be worked on. So what that looks like, again, whoever's assigned the item is going to get an email notification. And then if I go back to my project, I will see, as I go up to the top here, in in field management, we have our quality control module. So in this case, that's been uploaded. I'm back at the office and I want to go ahead and look at my punch lists. So I'm going to just pick the punch list type. And I happen to know that it's this one down here, this fixed drywall in office. So I can click into that, and all that information about the assignee and the space and everything is right here for me. I can add a comment to the discussion thread if I need to. I can edit it depending on my rights, or I can take a look here. So this is the original photo, And then this annotation has actually uploaded that picture with that markup to the system. So if I pop that open, I'm going to see that exact same image there with that markup, so I can zoom in on what needs to be done and when it needs to happen. So really, from the standpoint of the being in the field, really you just need a mobile device, the iPad or the iPhone, and a connection, and you can do that. You can also wait to upload things until you have a better connection if you need to. As far as managing these, then if you need to go back into the field and work with those items, we do also have a companion app to the Capture app, which is the Tasks app. So the interface is going to look very similar. You'll be able to pull up any of these punch list items or work to complete items you've created, work on those, resolve those in the field, update the status. You can walk around and see exactly, what the item is referring to, and again, kind of speed that process along without a lot of double work and uploads and downloads and printouts and so on. As a side note there, again, if you want to work mobilely, let's say you need to access some of the other parts of the website that aren't addressed by the apps. Since ConstructX is a web-based product, as long as you have a browser and an internet connection, you can log in and work with whatever projects you need to in the client as you would from your desk. So really, if you have an iPad or a tablet and you want to pull up the site and work on some submittals or check the sheets, anything like that, you can do that just as you would from your desktop. All right, and then just a couple of other things here to wrap up my formal part here, and then we'll look at questions. So the last point we had made, and this is just a general, we found this to be a good practice, is providing your team with training and support. So once the project is set up, really we have a couple things with ConstructX that we do that are included in the process. So you purchase a project, you're going to work on this project in ConstructX. We go through some steps to really try and help you succeed. So we're going to spend some time with you scoping what's the best way for your RFI and submittal workflow to work. So we have the standard. Sometimes we need to tweak that a bit. How does your project need to be set up? Are you going to use the register? Are you going to use some of our other automating pieces to get that project moving along? So we do a scoping call, we do a project setup training with the project leads who are going to be really administrating the project on a day-to-day basis. And then finally, and almost most importantly in this case, we do a training for the users, so your subs, your day-to-day, just sort of reviewers, folks who aren't responsible for administering but need to enter and interact with the software. And really what we can do then is walk through the workflow and the setup for your project as it's been decided on and configured, and help them get themselves up and running so that when the project kicks off, everyone's on the same page as far as the workflow goes, and understand that process, really streamlines that communication process and that project startup process to get everyone up and running and hit the ground running as soon as you're ready. So really that's because we do see a lot of questions, from a support standpoint, a lot of what we get is how-to and workflow process. So if we can help the team with an hour of time, just hop into this session and learn how to use this, how to do your job, within the software, it really helps speed things along and makes everybody's job easier. All right, so before I jump into questions, I do want to mention one other quick thing here. If you're interested, one of the things we do have available here, if you look in the handouts section of your webinar console there, we do have the ConstructX overview PDF available to give you some more information about the product as we've discussed today. We know we've gone through a lot of things here, but I want to just make that available to you. So let me look at questions here. Will these slides, yes, will the slides be available to us after the presentation? We will be posting a recording of this with the information to newforma.com, so that information will be available, yes. Any other questions? I was talking really quickly through a lot of that, so please feel free to post in the question box there. While we're taking a moment with that, I do just want to mention on that training and support front, one additional thing that can help your team. So we realize that, you know, team members come on to projects at different points in time, right? Especially if this is a multi-year project, multi-stage project, not everyone is necessarily going to be available day one. And we recognize that. So in addition to you know, remote training with a live trainer, one of the things we offer is, of course, in our product, you know, there's the typical help available. But beyond that, we have something that's, I think, is pretty cool and can really help sort of be an just-in-time training, if you will, for your team members. So there's this Show Me How bar over on the right here. What this really lets you do is, I'm back in as a subcontractor right now. So let's say it's been a while and I need to remind myself how to add a submittal. I'm going to pick Add a Submittal here. And what this does is it's going to take me step by step through what I need to do to add a submittal. The beauty of this is that as I'm learning this, as it's guiding me, I can use this as many times as I want. But at the end of the day, not only have I learned how to do this, but I have actually created that submittal. I've actually created that RFI. I've actually sent that email. I don't have to practice it and then go back and do it for real, because we know everyone's busy. We know everyone's time is valuable. So this is a way we can walk you through those steps, help you avoid any pitfalls so you do it correctly. And then at the end of the day, you have that item completed and you've refreshed your memory on how to do something. So just wanted to mention that quickly. But that is that. So looks like we're good on questions for now. So I just want to wrap up just a couple final pieces of information to leave you with. So if you're interested in learning more about ConstructX, about any things we talked about today, please reach out to us. You can easily do that by emailing constructx@newforma.com, or our sales and support phone number, or if you hit this link, this last link here, that'll let you enter your contact information, and we can reach out, you know, get a demo scheduled, or have our sales team contact you, answer any questions you might have. With that, we are all set. So I want to thank everybody for your time today. Hopefully this was valuable for you. And again, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions at all, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.